Chinese companies are going bankrupt. From electric cars to property developers, the trend is prominent. Today, we are going to find out the how and why is this happening. Stay tuned. For years, we have heard about the economic miracle of China, the rise of China on the world stage, the next superpower that will overthrow the American hegemony in the world. You might even want to learn Mandarin. Well, things are very much changed from that time. Open the news today about China and a new reality will come to light. Economic disaster. A failed government holding on to a failed view of ruling the country. Unable to tackle corruption and the subject of this video, Chinese companies are going bankrupt left and right. Let's start with the overall situation before we jump to the details. According to official statistics, up to 460,000 Chinese companies close each quarter in China. This number may be higher as many companies are on the verge of bankruptcy and have not yet filed for one. It should be also noted that the numbers coming out from China are widely inaccurate and they are always there to point a positive light on the communist government. When some statistics show a bad situation, they are either manipulated or cancelled altogether. For example, when the unemployment figures were too high, the stats were cancelled on some irrelevant reason. So take any number with a pinch of salt. In the first quarter of 2023, the manufacturing industry profit decreased by 27%. Core industries were hit the hardest. Chinese companies are struggling with both weak at home demand in the aftermath of a failed virus policy and softening demand in the country's major export markets. Unfortunately, an impending bankruptcy can lead to fraud. Business owners in China expecting to close may use a last ditch opportunity to make deals and make money for products that they will never actually ship. This is something that foreign companies doing business in China need to look out for. China is an investment led economy, not export led, as some people would think, meaning that property sales are the backbone of the Chinese economy. In 2021, for example, local governments in China earned 40% of their total revenue from the sale of land use rights. Local governments dramatically raised the price of land, subsequently of real estate because they use high priced land as collateral to get credit from local banks. Over in debt and an almost unrestricted increase in infrastructure projects whose economic benefits are questionable have become unavoidable. This has resulted in China's local government debt reaching $23 trillion. Housing assets account for about 70% of the wealth of Chinese households, and real estate accounts for 40% of GDP in 2022. Once this industry slumps, the wealth of Chinese people, especially the middle class, will shrink drastically. Many local governments, which used to rely on the property bubble to support their projects, have been plunged into chaos. And in some areas, even the salaries of teachers, public transportation, municipal employees, or public security officers cannot be paid as a result. Currently, Chinese officials categorize 14 out of 31 provinces as being in financial crisis. Now, that's the government situation. But what about the private side? Developer Country Garden is at risk of default, and Evergrande has filed for bankruptcy protection, and firms covering 40% of Chinese home sales have defaulted. China's property crisis is deep, with two major developers facing severe financial difficulties. that threatened to send shockwaves throughout the country's economy and beyond. Evergrande, the poster child for the woes of China's property sector, filed for bankruptcy protection in New York. The filing from Evergrande, which defaulted in 2021 after a liquidity crisis, came a day after China's security regulator notified the company's Chinese branch that it was being investigated for suspected disclosure violations. It is the world's most indebted property developer, with more than $300 billion in liabilities. Country Garden, which was once China's largest property developer by revenue, also faces a risk of default. Country Garden is one of the few major home builders to have avoided default since Beijing introduced a three red lines policy in 2020 that was aimed at reining in the debt levels in the highly leveraged sector. The red lines set limits on liabilities to assets ratios and ensure companies hold cash reserves equivalent to at least 100% of short-term debt. Since then, companies responsible for about 40% of Chinese home sales have defaulted. Country Garden has also missed $2 bond payments. Country Garden's liabilities total about 1.4 trillion yuan, which is 60% of the size of Evergrande. But Country Garden has nearly four times as many housing projects in China, leading to fears of more social unrest if constructions halt. There have already been reports of demonstrations outside the country's headquarters in Guangdong. The company has promised to deliver 700,000 units this year, but in the first 6 months, it completed less than half the number. The industry is in an unprecedented difficult period, the company said in a filing. As confidence in the real estate sector has plummeted, so have home sales, depriving developers of needed cash to complete construction works and meet interest payments. Country Garden sales were down by 60%, for example. The turmoil in China's property sector has left suppliers unpaid, and home buyers who have often made hefty down payments without their apartments. Buyers in hundreds of cities have staged mortgage boycotts in protest at the unfinished developments. That doesn't really matter though in a communist country, but good luck anyway. I'm sure that you heard about the rise of Chinese electric cars. A glimpse of gold out of bad news for the Asian giant. Probably right now, as we speak, articles are being written about how Chinese EVs will take over America and Europe. Well, I bet they won't talk about this one. After 8-year run and a reign as one of the highest funded EV startups in all of China, WM Motor and its brand Worldmeister has filed for bankruptcy. Yes, you heard that right. Even the glimpse of hope for China is actually a pile of dust. 1 month before, in November, they announced that the company would cut the salaries of managers by 50%, while other employees will take home 30% less. Bonuses have been cancelled, and the next payday has been postponed by a few weeks. And this month, October, the company have already announced that management would take a voluntary 50% pay cut. Wow. A few days later, they filed for bankruptcy. Waldmeister has tried prolonging this decision for as long as possible, hoping that they can get public on the American stock market and steal a few dollars from the West before crashing down. The reality of Chinese EVs is very shady, actually. The government is subsidizing these companies on a loss, hoping that they would get on the international markets before they can't keep up the domestic benefits anymore. But here is the deal, the West knows that. Ursula von der Leyen has pointed out in her State of the Union the bad practices coming out of China and the need to combat these practices. In my opinion, this is the beginning of the end for Chinese EVs, and just like the property developments and the whole country, they will be crashing down in the future. But hey, that's what I think. You might have a different opinion. I would love to hear it down in the comments. If you like this video, please subscribe and like the video. Thank you.